One of the most famous legacies of the Holocaust is The Diary of a Young Girl, written by Anne Frank. Published posthumously following her death, it has become one of the best-selling books in the world and has been translated into dozens of languages. Anne Frank's story is an incredibly sad one, in which she is forced to hide from the Nazis along with her family and others. The threat of discovery and death was prominent every day, and there was a network of helpers who aided the family to avoid detection. If they were found, it meant certain death inside of the concentration camps, as huge amounts of the Netherlands Jews were being rounded up and sent to camps such as Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz. But the story of the Frank family is an incredibly tragic one, which saw only one member survive. Join us today as we look at the horrific executions of the Frank family. Remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Anne Frank lived with her mother Edith, father Otto, and her older sister Margot inside of Amsterdam. They had moved a number of times throughout the years, and they were amongst 300,000 Jews who had fled Germany following Hitler's rise to power. They moved and settled in Amsterdam, and the girls were enrolled in school, but they quickly mastered the Dutch language and thrived. In 1938, Otto Frank began a new company named Pectacon, which was a wholesaler of herbs and spices used to produce sausages. As the Second World War began in Europe following the German invasion of Poland, things would become very dangerous for Jews living on the continent, and there was a great deal of uncertainty at the time. But in the summer of 1942, the Germans began to deport Jews from the Netherlands to transit camps, and then further to concentration camps. With this, Otto and Edith drew up a plan to go into hiding along with their two daughters. However, Margot was issued with a call-up notice by the Office of Jewish Immigration early on the 5th of July 1942 that forced her to relocate to a work camp. This brought the hiding plans forward, and the Frank family on the 6th of July 1942 went into hiding. A note was left for the neighbour of their house to look after the cat, and the family entered their hiding place, which was a 3-storey space above the Opekta offices on the Prinsengracht Canal. Some of the family's closest friends and Otto's most trusted employees were asked to help, and the hiding place became known as the Secret Annex. Only very few knew of the people hiding, and the Franks were later joined by the Van Pels family, and also Fritz Pfeffer, a friend of the family. The hiders would live constantly in fear of being discovered, and the family spent 761 days inside of the Secret Annex, with every day following the same sort of routine. Life was risky, as they were living above a warehouse, and any noises could arouse suspicion, but on the morning of the 4th of August 1944, the Secret Annex was stormed by a number of German uniformed policemen. The Franks, Van Pels and Pfeffer had been betrayed, and they were taken to the RSHA headquarters, where they were questioned and interrogated and held overnight. Following this, they were transferred to a house of detention, which was very overcrowded, and they were then transported onto the Westerbork transit camp, where 100,000 Jews would pass through before being sent to camps such as Auschwitz. As they had been hiding, they were considered criminals and were kept in the punishment barracks for hard labour. The group were kept together and were deported on the last transport from Westerbork on the 3rd of September 1944 to Auschwitz. After a very long train journey, the family was sent to the horrific death camp, and it was upon their arrival in Auschwitz where the family was split. The Frank family's story is an incredibly sad one, and their fate is tragic, but what we will now do is look individually at the fates of the different family members. Otto Frank would last see his wife and children when they were split up by the SS upon arriving at Auschwitz. Following the separation at the platform of Auschwitz Birkenau, Otto, along with other men from the Secret Annex, stayed together. Otto was first put to work outside the camp in the Kommand Kiesgruber, which was a gravel mine. The gravel was used for various construction projects throughout the Third Reich, but he was then transferred to the Kommando Straßenbau, where he built roads outside the camp. Things were very tough, and when the frost made working outside impossible, he was forced to peel potatoes. Otto was helped by Peter Van Pels, who helped him get some extra food when he worked in the camp's post office, and he had a number of other friends inside of the camp who would help. He was beaten at one point by the SS guards, and it was as if he had lost hope, but with the help of a Dutch doctor he was taken to the infirmary. As the Soviets advanced towards the camp as the war turned against the Germans, Otto remained at the sick barracks and was too weak to accompany other prisoners on the death marches. He was found weighing 52 kilograms and was close to death. He claimed that he survived because he was lucky and had good friends. However, as soon as he gained his strength, he wanted to find his family. His hope of this ended in July 1945, when he was informed of the deaths of his wife and children. He would later receive his daughter Anne's diary and would publish it, and he died in August 1980, being the only member of the Frank family to survive the Holocaust. Edith was Otto's wife and the mother of Margot and Anne. She was described as an excellent mother who put her children above all else. She had a very hard time in the Secret Annex, but when they arrived at Birkenau, mother and daughters managed to stay together. They would depend on each other to survive, but Margot and Anne were temporarily isolated from Edith as they suffered from scabies, and Edith would dig a hole to pass some extra food inside their barracks. But at the end of October 1944, Edith was separated from her daughters. They were sent to Bergen-Belsen, and Edith remained inside of Auschwitz. She was close with Rosa de Winter, and the pair would form a good companionship. However, Edith fell ill. She had been selected to go to the gas chambers, however managed to escape with a friend to another part of the camp, where she stayed throughout winter. When she did fall ill, she would never recover and was taken to Auschwitz's sick barracks. She developed a high fever, and it was said when she arrived, one morning new patients were brought in. All of a sudden I recognised Edith. She came from another ward. She was only a shadow. A few days later she died, completely exhausted. Edith Frank succumbed to the harsh and brutal conditions of Auschwitz, despite escaping the gas chambers, and tragically she would pass away on the 6th of January 1945, 3 weeks before the camp was liberated. Inside of Auschwitz Birkenau, Margot Frank, the eldest daughter, was forced to carry stones and conduct other work. These work detachments were organised into those fit enough to work, whilst those who were becoming weaker were killed inside the gas chambers. Along with her sister, Margot was deported to Bergen-Belsen as the war was turning against the Germans. They were loaded onto a train in the night of the 1st of November, and a terrifying long journey in the overcrowded carriages caused them to be led to Belsen. But Belsen was a camp which was incredibly tragic and had seen great problems in overcrowding. It was crippled by the huge amount of prisoners being sent there, and there was little food and sanitation, and hygiene was awful. Infection and disease was rife, and hundreds were dying a day inside the camp. When the British liberated Belsen, they found 10,000 corpses unburied and 60,000 people close to death. However, Margot and Anne would not survive the conditions. After arriving at Belsen, Margot contracted typhus, which was rife, and she became very sick. It killed 17,000 prisoners there, and the reports of Margot's death do differ. She became sick and delirious, and it was said she either succumbed to the disease or she fell from her bunk in her weakened state and was killed by the shock of her fall. The conditions in which the Nazis operated the sadistic camp killed Margot Frank. It was said that the Frank girls contracted typhus symptoms by the 7th of February 1945, and it's believed that within 12 days of their first symptoms, most typhus victims inside of concentration camps would die. Anne would also succumb to the disease, and her exact date of death is not known. Such was the huge scores of people being killed at Belsen at that time in the war. It was believed that she passed away weeks before the British soldiers liberated the camp, and managed to get medical attention to those who had the disease. Ultimately, it was like her sister that the appalling conditions of Belsen was the executioner of Anne Frank, and the cruelty of those guards who allowed such depravity to continue and happen helped her to die. When the British arrived at Belsen, they were appalled by what they saw: 10,000 corpses and 60,000 starving and dying people. They managed to save as many as they could, but for Margot and Anne Frank, they were too late. Following the war, Otto Frank was hopeful that his daughters had survived, but he learned of their deaths from the people who knew them inside the camp. Of the whole people who hid in the Secret Annex, Otto Frank was the only survivor of 8, which shows the destructive nature of the Holocaust. They were imprisoned inside the concentration camps towards the end of the war, and ultimately the Frank women were killed by the conditions at either Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Their story is a tragic one of suffering at the hands of one of the world's most evil regimes. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, And once again, thank you so much for watching.